It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris.
My name is Mike.
And this week we are diving into Blade's apparent period piece movie. Mike.
Apparently we are.
Yes. I don't know if it... We have a lot of rumors this week, so if this is not news to you guys, great. But we're gonna throw into some rumors here because what are those scoopers on Twitter or X or whatever? They're coming out with some stuff. Officially though, Daredevil gets born again with a TV showrunner and directors. Mike, they've already got some replacements in mind. The Lantern Show. Do you remember this? The Green Lantern Show, but it's just called Lanterns because
was this the HBO Max
this is the new one,
Bad Robot one?
This is James Gunn's Lantern Show.
Oh my God, I can't even keep track.
Right, exactly. That's what we'll talk. It's starting to look like it's going to start pre-production soon. So maybe we'll have more details on this Gunniverse, if you will, Gunn and Safranverse, and more in today's episode.
Man, we've put so much effort into projects that have never even gotten off the ground but officially announced and end up getting canceled, that it's like they never happened. But Chris, we literally spent hours of our lives talking about these things, and then in the future no one will even know that they nearly never happened.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what's going to be great is, I don't ever recommend people going back and listening to our show historically, but boy, would you hear how many times we've talked about things or had hype for things that just fluttered off into the wind somewhere else, that never to be seen or heard from again. So
I disagree. I think everyone should go back through our catalog and listen to everything at least twice, because that's the only way you'll be able to know in the future if an AI comes in and just replicates us. So we're going to need those diligent fans and their, very accurate ears to tell the difference.
That's right. And you know what? That's a great time, Mike, to remind people we are live streaming on YouTube when we do these now on Sunday. There's no set time, so don't put something in your calendar by any means. But if you're listening to us now, or you're watching us on YouTube, leave us a like, give us a subscribe, because we're going to be here every week. And if you're subscribed, you get a notification when we're streaming, so you might be able to catch a little bit of these tidbits a little early. Well, if you're listening to us.
I thought I saw that YouTube was working on this new feature that when you tell people to click the bell or ring the bell, they were going to use AI to know if the video is saying hey, ring that bell, and they were going to jingle a little bell in the corner of your video.
Oh, yeah.
So if we just say bell, 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 bell over and over again, is it going to be like when you send an emoji to somebody with the screen effect on iOS? It's just all over the screen.
In 8 more years, we'll come back and listen to you saying bell a bunch of times and see if YouTube brings that bell for us.
Oh my God, this won't even be a thing in 8 years. Yep. Just like 8 years ago, people put all of those clickable annotations over every single pixel of a video, and they were turning it into those choose your own adventure games.
Oh yeah,
that was wild. Even at the time, I was just there's no way that this is here forever. People are gonna have these janky old videos saying click the screen now, and it's just click my hand, click my face. No, that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people pranking you, right? Click these nuts is what those little kids were putting on YouTube 8 years ago.
Chris.
Got them. Didn't even see it coming. But let's get into it. We are in October, and the end of October here. This is the last week of October, and right before October ends, Mike, I hate to tell people this, but it is your birthday coming up in November. And
yeah, that's true.
And I don't think this is tied to your birthday, but maybe it was. I don't know. But you took a little trip this weekend.
Yeah, it historically usually is tied to my birthday, but not this year. Just conveniently close enough. We took our pilgrimage down to Disneyland, about an hour away from our place, and it was great fun. I hadn't been there for about 4 years, so a lot had kind of changed and updated. And the biggest change is last time I was there, I did get a chance to see Galaxy's Edge, but now I finally got to ride the big ride, Rise of the Resistance. And Chris, I told you I'd come on the show this week and tell you about it because you are a little bit more cautious about maybe rides that fling you around.
Well, it's drops.
Or
It's dark drops. Dark sudden drops that are like the bane of my existence.
Yeah. So when you were in Disney World, you neglected to take on this ride. And I'll let you know, Chris, the drop that does exist in Rise of the Resistance, I could only define as a baby drop.
Okay,
like
good.
It is total, like, my wife described it very well to myself. She got car sick in a backseat of an Uber on the way to the airport a couple of weeks ago, and that's how sensitive her constitution is. And she was fine during this. It was like no big deal.
Yeah, and I don't think it would make me sick. It's just one of those things, like when it says there's a drop, I'm like, do I trust this? But at the same time, like I always say, my mental capacity is, there are 5-year-olds on this ride. I can do this ride.
Yeah, and I won't spoil it for you, but the drop, and well, because I think you watched it on YouTube or a ride along. It's very telegraphed, but it's actually kind of fun the way it's telegraphed, because you're like, oh no, I'm about to be dropped. But we went on the ride, and the friend that we went with, who'd been on it before, let us know that there was a couple components of the ride not working quite right. And the only thing I really knew about this ride outside of the context of what's in it is that it breaks down all the time. And I don't know if it's just because it's so complex and there's so many moving parts, like literally and kind of figuratively, of just getting things around. But of course, the ride was broken for half of the day, the first half of the day that we were there yesterday.
And this is one of those, so people don't know, this isn't like a normal ride at Disney. This is one of the newer ones where they use the magnetic tracks under the floor, like Ratatouille does, right? And then there's also multiple levels, doesn't it? It pulls you onto like a thing and rises you up and down.
Yeah,
multiple
there's definitely levels to it. There's some like trickery where you get into a pod and then they move you in real life, but then trick you into thinking that you're kind of not moving but are moving. It's kind of hard to explain. So it's like you enter this door one way, then you exit and you're totally in a different location. It was really fun. There's lots of fun kind of Imagineering stuff going on here. But I was a little bummed because the things that were broken, and I was described to what they were supposed to be, I was like, oh man, that stuff would have been really cool. But overall, the ride was cool. I was glad that we got to ride it because, like I said, it was like closed for like half of the day, and then we were checking the app constantly waiting for it to open up. And then luckily I checked the app just at the right time where it had just opened back up, and the wait times were like maybe 20 minutes, and they were 20 minutes for like 4 seconds, until like the rest of the park ran over there. But Rise of the Resistance was great and fun. And then to contrast the most modern ride that they have, we rode one of their oldest rides, Mr. Toad's Wild Adventure or Mysterious Adventure or Crazy Adventure. No, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. And that was fantastic. That was so fun. It's just it's a ride contained in such a tight spot that they really use every single square inch of whatever blackout neon warehouse that they've made. It's just hilarious. The subject matter is like so crazy for kids, but it's such a legacy ride. They leave it in there. Like you literally go to hell in the ride, and then it shoots you out at the end. It's amazing. You got to ride Mr. Toad's if you ever get a chance to go to a Disney park. I think
they don't have them at Disney World. I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
because I've never ridden it.
You're gonna have to come out and see me, and then we can go do it.
Yeah, because I've never even, I've heard of it, but I was like, I could not figure out how to get it there, and I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure it's only Disneyland. So
I did get to eat my first Ronto wrap too.
Oh yeah,
it was pretty good. I'm a fan of coleslaw on hot dogs, and then you know what? Most of the time, the bun on a hot dog to me is kind of an afterthought. So the fact that it's replaced with like a pita thing was like awesome. I was like, oh, I'm just thinking of a million ways I could jazz up a Ronto wrap. Man, throw some like fries into that Ronto wrap. Yep. Maybe some sort of like maybe red type of like spiciness that goes over the top of it could be really good. Great, awesome Ronto wraps. But that's besides the point. Disneyland, yeah, I went there, but the most pressing date coming up, which might not happen just yet, depending on when you're listening to this episode, is Halloween is on the horizon. So it's that time of the month where you start to watch spooky things, or maybe finishing up spooky things and quickly transitioning to the holiday stuff. But I caught a movie from technically 2007 called Trick or Treat.
Is it called Trick or Treat? Yeah, don't church it up. We know what it is.
Well, apparently I was looking up. It was supposed to be just more traditionally like Trick or Treat, but somebody else already nabbed that name, so they changed it to an R, which was pretty clever. But this is kind of a fun movie, in a sense of if you've ever caught like those like New Year's Eve or Valentine's Day movie where it's just like kind of a few different stories that kind of coalesce towards the end. This is kind of like the horror version of that, where you're dropped in on this like small town during Halloween night. You get to see like 3 or 4 kind of different stories that happen across the town with like vampires or kind of slasher, werewolves, like zombie type of stuff. And then there's this like little boy with a bag on his head, kind of like demon that is kind of like cross-pollinating across all of them. But it's really, really fun. It's labeled as kind of like a horror comedy. But I would say it's almost a horror with like comedic elements in a way. It's not like not necessarily, I guess, as straightforward as like Cabin in the Woods kind of might be a little bit more comedic. But it was fun, and I can tie it to our show pretty directly because Anna Paquin stars in one of the stories. Brian Cox, who I forgot,
2 X-Men people right away.
Not just in Succession, also X-Men. And then also the writer-director Michael Daughtry has cross-pollinated with a lot of stuff that we talk about on the show, like Godzilla, King of Monsters. He directed that. Godzilla vs. Kong, unfortunately, X-Men Apocalypse, but also Krampus. I love Krampus. Superman Returns, which I feel like we haven't touched on in a while, and then also X2.
He did X-Men Apocalypse with Bryan Singer. I blame Bryan Singer for that. But I pulled up Trick or Treat on Google. I know you told me about this. So I pulled it up. It's also got Dylan Baker, who was the Lizard in Raimi's Spider-Man movies, kind of. He was a professor with one arm.
Yeah, you're right. He plays a really fun character in this movie.
And then it says Leslie Bibb, and I'm pretty sure Leslie Bibb was in Iron Man 1 as the reporter he sleeps with where he's, what's her name? Pepper was like, I'm also responsible for taking out his trash kind of thing. So
it's got to be that Bryan Singer kind of Marvel radius around this. But this is a fun movie just to dive into. It's nothing so grotesque that if you're like a scaredy baby, you're not going to be able to watch this. But there's some like silly things in here that you can press on forward. So give it a shot. Trick or Treat. And then last up, Chris, you were lucky enough to supply me with a viewing of Five Nights at Freddy's. I don't think you've caught it yet, though.
I've not, and I'm not going to because I don't care. This is not a game. Number one, I'm not a horror movie person. It's never jive with me. Just don't watch them. Never played the games either. Missed out on this. However, I will say, Mike, I provided you a copy, but this movie is in theaters and streaming, I believe, on Peacock, is what you said, at the same time. Mm-hmm. So this is a pandemic model still for this show. But before you get into it, that is the highest live action adaptation for a video game movie to ever hit theaters. So despite it being on Peacock, people are going to the theaters to watch this movie right now. And I think that's great for people who do enjoy it. So continue with telling how it is. But just that the numbers alone are mind blowing for this movie in theaters for when you could just pay $5 and watch it on streaming.
Yeah, I suppose your experience may vary depending on where you live and what theater you like to go to. But I watched this in the comfort of my own home, and I'm glad I did. Because after kind of looking up kind of different stories or crowd reactions to this movie, apparently there's been a high probability that you could have been caught in a movie theater with children in a sense of they were hooping and hollering at the screen, yelling memes at the screen and lines from the video game, and just being like really weird, awkward theater-going guests. A lot of people, I know this only because a lot of people were whipping out their phones and like recording the screen while they're in there. And I was like, if I was in one of these theaters, I would have killed myself. I would have begged for Bonnie to come out of the screen and bite me in half, because it sounds like it's a nightmare if you're kind of targeting that video game audience.
It's the spookiest movie, Mike, for you, because it's your nightmare come to life.
But I guess the best thing I could say about this movie is the wife and I sat down, watched it, and it held our attention enough to where we didn't pick up our phones once. Yeah. So I think that's pretty good. I'm kind of interested in the Five Nights at Freddy's lore just in general, not because I've played the games, but I've watched people play the games. They're people that have put together kind of like lore explanation videos, and it's just kind of silly to go down the rabbit hole sometimes, like on your lunch break. You pop up one of these YouTube videos like, oh, what's this crazy universe with like mascots and stuff and animatronics. And, if you can really just kind of turn your brain off, which is a thing that I hate when people tell me to do that, this is definitely one of those movies where you just got to sit back, let it wash over you, and just see the really impressive puppetry. Really, that's what it is. The Jim Henson Company were the ones that created all these animatronics. As far as I know, the kind of beating drum by the PR companies is that there's like no like quote CG for the characters. It's all puppetry. If there's any really big movements, it was people in the costumes, and beyond that, it was maybe controlled by like rods or like ropes and stuff like that. And they look so impressive, it almost takes me out of it because it looks like they're literally pulled straight from the video game. So it's almost like they don't match to the real world because they look too similar like they do from the video games. I don't really know if that's necessarily a criticism, but it's just very, very fine craftsmanship on these puppets. So I could recommend this one, but I couldn't recommend anyone go to the theater, I think, to see this unless you're some sort of mega fan. There's a cameo from a YouTuber in this that a lot of people freaked out over, but they freaked out so much that if you were in that certain type of theater, you would have missed all of their lines in the scene because people were like freaking out and rolling on the ground and stuff. So yeah, you might have to watch this one at home just for your sanity. But like weirdly enough, I would watch more of these. I mean, the games get progressively weirder with their lore and background, and I think I would just be a glutton for more of that on Peacock. So there you go. That's my pitch to the studios to keep making these, but please just put them out on streaming. I don't want to go to the theater for these.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's making too much money for you to get your wish now, Mike. So that's the way it is. But yes, that is absolutely out. One of the things I was say. That I had on in the background this week, and I forgot. I messaged you an article because I just couldn't believe it, Mike, was Casper, the 1995 movie Casper, the Friendly Ghost, starring Bill Pullman, Christina Ricci, and a CGI ghost. And at one point, early on in the movie, there's actually one of the Monty Python Eric Idles. There's a Ghostbusters reference early on, I think twice, with Dan Aykroyd showing up as a cameo. I was like, I can't believe how many cameos they got in this little movie. And then later on, when Bill Pullman's, I think he's like not infected but he's like possessed by a ghost. He sits up multiple times, and they got Clint Eastwood, Rodney Dangerfield, Mel Gibson, and then the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt in it. I was like,
oh yeah, that's from there's like a mirror kind of gag, right?
He's like
shape shifting or something.
Yeah, he's like I think someone's like one of the ghosts is in him, and every time he like raises his head up from splashing water on his face, he's a different person. And I was like, I just can't fathom a movie right now, Mike, in our day and age that would literally have, again, the spectrum that is Clint Eastwood and Rodney Dangerfield, right, kind of cameoing, and then Mel Gibson, except for Deadpool. Deadpool is like the only movie, or anything with Ryan Reynolds, I'm like, you could pull off any cameo you want with him because he's such a likable dude. So I thought that was really fun. So don't forget Casper in your Halloween watching movies. I have a Christmas playlist, but not a Halloween playlist. It's just not on me. But I'm gonna jump in. One of the things I've been doing has been partially reading, partially listening, because I traveled for work last week. I was gone all week, to a book called The Reign of the MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, sorry, is what's officially called. I pulled up my article here. Written by, and I just told you this, Mike, and I've lost it, Joanna Robinson, Dave Gonzalez, and Gavin Edwards. And it is essentially a history of Marvel Studios. And if that sounds familiar to you, Mike, what did we do, I guess, in 2013 as a collaboration before we even had this podcast?
We made some fun little like infographics
Marvel. Yeah, so one of the cool, I guess not one of the cool things, one of the things about this, it literally goes back in time to like when Stan Lee created Marvel Studios in the 70s, and they couldn't make anything because everything was awful, and then the hiring or the takeover by Ike Perlmutter in the 90s and then hiring Avi Arad, who was a toy designer, Mike, the guy who single-handedly created and ruined Spider-Man movies, was a toy designer years before he did this. There's this information that I probably could have found if I researched, but it's all compacted in here. Then eventually, obviously, it gets to, Marvel. One person at Marvel, I forget his name, who went to Perlmutter and said, look, if we create our own studio, we can control the characters and how we portray them to sell more toys, because that's all Perlmutter ever wanted. He owned Toy Wiz. That's all he ever wanted to do was make these movies to sell toys, Mike. And it's always been there. We've always maybe mentioned it, but I've never really thought about that, right? Like, every Marvel movie since the 90s was made to sell more toys. And that's all they ever did. So, and then, kind of, I'm at the part where they're kind of getting into the MCU a little bit and like bringing it up, like we talked about, like 2015, where Ike Perlmutter in charge of Marvel proper and Kevin Feige, like they're battling, so Disney had to separate them essentially to keep on it. And then it's even funnier because I guess this week is what the South Park the Panderverse episode, where they talk about having the Pander Stone to create the same generic movies over and over again. Disney does, which includes like Marvel stuff. So it's all very, very, very fun. And then the other, we'll talk about here in a second. There's another book came out, but I really, if you want a history of Marvel Studios, not just MCU, not just Iron Man forward and all the issues we hear about now, but like all the good things and the different people, this is a really great book, Mike, to talk about it. And one of the I wrote it down here. One of the Kevin Feige things. One of his mentor taught him to make decisions based on how you want the audience to feel rather than trying to overwhelm them with your artistic vision. So that kind of gives the through line through the book is like, Marvel is really hiring film managers and not artists, if you will. And they don't criticize it either way. It's a historical thing, right? It's not a review book. It's this is what the facts are kind of book. So it's fun to kind of take that and kind of extrapolate a little bit. So I plan on maybe coming back or maybe you'll read it. I don't know. Get into it here later whenever I get through it. But that brings me to the first point. Is out this week, Mike, and I'm probably going to get myself a copy. It's on sale at Target right now. It's Marvel Studios, the Marvel Cinematic Universe Unofficial Timeline. What a mouthful this is. But is now in stores, and if you wanted the official timeline from Marvel proper, you can go pick it up in hard copy at your local bookstores.
Chris, this right here, this is the money-making scheme right here, because this timeline is constantly evolving and changing, and every time there's like an edit, like they do one edit in a Google Doc, it's like, let's republish a new book. Yeah. If these nerds want the most accurate, updated timeline, they're gonna have to buy it.
Well, so the book actually goes all the way through the start of Loki season 2, I believe. Which is, I'm thoroughly surprised they've never released anything like this before, if you will. Right, like you mentioned, as a money-making scheme, yes, but they've never released one before. But it's written by Anthony Breznican and Amy Ratcliffe, and I again, coffee table kind of book, but it's been fun to kind of go through it. They use in this is very relevant, Miss Minutes as like a little, like a note taker, like an annotation thing, on some of the things, because there's a Spider-Man Homecoming starts with I think 8 years ago, right, in that movie. It literally was 4 years ago when you do all the math. They were like, Miss Minutes, like, we don't know how this got past us. This was definitely a mess up. And then they move on. Like, there's no like explaining like they don't have to explain away that they're like, yeah, we goofed, we get it. We don't have to do the reverse math to make this fit. We know we messed up, kind of thing. So I think that's interesting. And this would be I would be keen to know, Mike, will the Disney Plus or whoever, Spider-Man is owned by Sony. When it comes to Disney, do you think they'll change that title card to match this book going forward? Like, because Disney is known to change things in their movies, right? When it's
that's true. I don't know. I would think the probability would be higher if it technically didn't have like Sony's fingerprints on it, right? I wouldn't be surprised that there's some sort of clause that stops them from editing it, like kind of, because it's like messing with distribution, which is kind of like a whole part of the deal,
Yeah, absolutely. It'd just be interesting. But I have not had a chance to get my hands on this book, but I'm very excited to read it. There've been a lot of articles. The Spider-Man one obviously was one of the big ones, but I'm excited to do it. And, I would hope that, if I was going to be completely honest, Mike, if I was the person doing this, I would do this every phase, right? Like every MCU quote unquote phase they have planned out. Like, okay, here it is. And here's how it works. But you know, we'll see if anything actually comes out of this kind of going forward. Before I get into the next topic, actually, I'm gonna drop a new topic in here, Mike. Spider-Man 2. Can I tell you why this is in here? Because
wax poetically. Are we talking Spider-Man
the
2,
game,
the movie, Spider-Man 2, the other movie, Spider-Man 2, the other movie, or Spider-Man 2, the video game, or Spider-Man 2, the other video game?
The other video game. Actually.
There you go.
Okay. The new one that just came out, and we talked about last week. In most of our show, I beat the campaign. I had a little extra time this week whenever I got back from traveling, and I beat the campaign of this game. Like, I'm not here to spoil it. I'm not here to tell you anybody anything about this game, except as someone who does our show notes weekly, Mike, I see a lot more information than than the normal person would or would want to see, right, on details, and I was still surprised throughout this game playing it. So I just want to say, despite what you may think about this game, don't read anything, but like what you may know, they have some really fun curveballs in here, Mike, that I cannot wait to talk to you about, whenever you get there. The other part I did know, so there's a bunch of suits, right? You unlock the suits as you level up in the game, and then you do some missions, and you unlock other suits. They're actually suits for the pre-order, the digital deluxe edition, that are not in here unless you buy them, and that's like the most disappointing part about this. Knowing this, like, there's like the spider, their version of a Spider-Punk outfit, right? That's only in the digital deluxe version. You don't actually unlock it playing it. I thought you just unlocked it early by doing that, but they actually did lock some suits behind a paywall. So,
oh boy,
yeah, kind of disappointing, but very excited. Hopefully, I don't expect anyone to rush to beat this game. I did not expect to beat it in the first week. I just had a lot of extra time and stayed up way too late one night. Shouldn't have been doing that. So absolutely blast. Hopefully everyone can. I think they said it's like one of the highest selling Spider-Man games ever. So doing the work for Sony out there. But in Spider-Man movie wise proper, this is some notes that kind of came out this week through one of those reliable scoopers. But Sony will not let Marvel use Black Cat in any of their movies. And that is why she has not appeared in the current 3 iterations that we've seen in the MCU.
Well, it seems like there's always like some sort of rumored like Amazon Prime project or
Black and Silver and Black or whatever
like
it was
we're
called.
gonna whip out Black Cat. The funny thing is like Black Cat is a very top tier character, I would say, within the world of Spider-Man. Once you kind of get past the iconic villains, right? You got to go to the supporting like heroes, and like Black Cat is usually up there, right? But not really a big box office taker, I would say, for sure. Like, I think depending on whatever lore, whatever comic book universe that you're in, I think Black Cat sometime is like super powered, sometimes not. Just kind of like a thief, kind of like Catwoman a little bit in Batman. But yeah, they're really holding on to that character, not doing anything with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the closest we've gotten to a Black Cat, there was a Felicia Hardy in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, played by the actress who was in Rogue One, main actress in Rogue One. But I always think of Batman, The Dark Knight Rises, the third one in the middle film, who had Anne Hathaway play like the Catwoman, who was more of a Black Cat version of this. So I was like, man, this is really disappointing. We don't get something similar in this, but hopefully Sony's like, yeah, we can loosen up on this character and not have to worry about creating a solo property for someone like that. The other part of this, I'd say the bigger rumor of this, is that Andrew Garfield is rumored to make a return in other Spider-Man projects.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me as much now that maybe that has been accelerated, because after he was in No Way Home, and they've also included that kind of live action clip of him in Spider-Verse 2, they see that there's a desire out there for an audience. Like, the audience is clamoring for more Andrew Garfield. But it's a vocal minority, right? I'm not saying it in a sense of like it's a bad minority, but I don't think Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man is gonna push box office dollars like a Tom Holland Spider-Man's going to do, So this seems to me like a ploy where you use him to maybe juice a third Venom movie or juice whatever villain crossover movie that they're going to do.
Maybe put him in Secret Wars. Give him to Marvel again. Like, hey, you want another Andrew Garfield cameo in your movies, Marvel?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I don't think Andrew Garfield was a bad Spider-Man or Peter Parker. I just think that second movie of his with the Green Goblin and Electro, setting Black Cat, setting up all the other villains, got really out of control. And if the next movie was going to be him riding a T-Rex in the Sinister Six that we talked about last week, I'm so glad we didn't get that. Whoever was in charge at the time just did not quite understand, Spider-Man, right? They were selling franchise, they were selling toys. So I think he having him in there would be fun. But like you mentioned, I don't think we're going to do Amazing Spider-Man 3, right? I don't think that's on the table. Do you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they're going to be cannibalizing their own Spider-Man movie franchise. Yeah, I mean, the MCU is kind of in charge of it in a way, but it's not like Sony's not getting money out of it.
Right.
So yeah, like I said, I think it would be like a movie. For example, probably the easiest example, they would just call the movie Sinister Six, and then Spider-Man's in the trailer. He's on the poster, he's in it, but like it's technically not a Spider-Man movie.
Mm-hmm, right, exactly. And this is also, I have my here notes. He is not replacing Tom Holland. Tom Holland will continue in his Spider-Man movies because his trilogy kind of set him up to do his own little thing. So absolutely, I think Spider-Man as the characters and as a franchise in Sony's hands is always a big question mark. Like, hey, do we trust them? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, Mike. This is I want to chalk this up as we don't know yet, right? Maybe it could be good, but with Craven on the horizon and Madam Web, which we actually did not get a trailer for, Mike, disappointingly. It means it's probably not going to hit that January date. So I think this is maybe something we could possibly look forward to down the road. Let's jump into the Marvel world a little bit. There was a little teaser this week, a scary HallowStream Disney Plus promotion showing off really spooky, quote-unquote spooky things from Marvel, right, the MCU. But they were like really cutting comedy moments and then making it look creepy, like the ant drumming the rock band drums from the second Ant-Man movie. Like, that's not creepy in the movie, right? Like, it's a funny moment. Or Ant-Man, like, with the ants, like, yes, it's a little scary, but like, it's still Ant-Man. We know it's a comedy movie. So they're cutting all this creepy looking things together for HallowStream. But the end of this teaser, Mike, shows a very, very large chain coming across the screen as a transition. And the only character I can think of, who uses a chain almost exclusively in Marvel is Ghost Rider. And people are trying to think maybe, and he's scary. He's obviously a demon-infested biker with a flaming helmet. So people are like, well, is this chain, and it's even on the preview right there of the thumbnail here, right, on Twitter, are they trying to set up or tease a Ghost Rider thing in the future, or trying to gauge interest? What do you think is going on with a chain when there's no other chains in this whole trailer, nor does anyone else use a chain in Marvel?
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like the biggest split here is like, obviously this video to me seems like something that's made from like a marketing department, out of Marvel.
You need a holiday video for Halloween. What can you come up with?
Yeah, it's like I highly doubt the masterminds of the story universe are inside of this.
Yeah.
It's just like the Disney Plus department putting this together. So is somebody just like, oh, let's just put a chain in there because it's kind of like it's spooky, right, and it will look cool, and oh, I just happen to have this asset in a folder, so let's use it? Or are they just like, oh, let's like kind of lean into the speculation, this will be really fun?
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe somebody like really is playing like next level chess there. I don't know, but it's funny. It's really funny when this stuff just kind of plays with us,
Yeah, and I think the editor or the the person doing the graphics is like, what would really get everyone talking? I'm just gonna throw this in here and see if anyone tells me to change it, because I want it to come, because again, the chain does look like a plugin you would buy off a website, right? It's not like it's a flaming chain or or Ghost Rider. You don't hear a motorcycle. It's very generic and blank. So you know, take with it as you will. But I thought that was a very, again, after watching it and watching it kind of from an editor's point of view, I'm like, this is a really weird thing to just throw here at the end of this video when you didn't use it anywhere else at all.
Yeah, and also like they have all of the little like logos here at the end for all of the different properties. None of them prominently feature like a chain in any way. It is a very out of place asset, right?
Yeah.
You know, I suppose a chain can be spooky, but like in the context of like the MCU, like there's nothing to chain. You know,
a chain is spooky when it's paired with something spooky, like ghosts shackled, right? Shackled ghosts. Yeah. I always think Christmas because of the Marley Brothers, but like. Yeah, like it's someone is either doing this on purpose or was just like, you know, we'll just throw it at the end, see if anybody notices. Maybe the people who are proofreading this don't check the whole video, Mike. They're like, well, we trust you in the last 5 seconds. So, but yeah, it's just really, to me, it's funny because it's a lot of extrapolation for nothing at the end of the day. But you know, what do we know, Mike? We just do a show every week. We're not making the decisions over there. The Fantastic Four movie is something I think a lot of people are waiting for, right? And it come to Marvel, the first opportunity to have a better than below average Fantastic Four movie in there. And the working title for this movie has now been revealed as being called Blue Moon. And while you might think it's the name of a song from the movie Grease, it's not. It's a reference to the blue area of the moon discovered by Fantastic Four in the comics, which is where Uatu the Watcher lives and watches over the Earth from. So I think it's a little fun thing.
I mean, the Watcher, he's got to watch everything in existence, right? Do you think he just has condos on every moon across every solar system in the universe?
Yeah, possibly. He might. He has portals, probably. You know,
or Earth is just so special, he had to create a standalone place on the other side of the
Yeah, and for some reason it's a blue area too. Why is it blue? There could be any other color. It could be the dark side of the moon. The phrase that everyone uses already. I don't know why. But one of the synopsis, quote unquote synopsis for this, they're working on it's starting. The Fantastic Four is starting off on a grand cosmic adventure, Mike. Leaving me feeling they're not going to be on Earth very long. This might be more space based kind of Fantastic Four movie. How does that make you feel?
Yeah. I mean, that could be interesting. I mean, I would say maybe the biggest takeaway from this is that their powers might come from a more traditional route of where they've gotten their powers in the past, right? You know, the MCU has come up with new, clever ways to give people their origin powers. So I could have easily have seen, like, maybe it's a science experiment in a lab, or maybe, I don't know, somebody like hit an infinity stone with a hammer, even though they technically don't exist, but there's multiverses now. So there's many different ways they could have got their powers, but you know, if this is going to be a more traditional route, you know, that's good too.
Yeah, and if they tell it right, that's fine as well. Maybe we don't have to know how they got their powers, right? Maybe it could start off like Spider-Man. We've seen I can think of 3 iterations since 1994 of their powers, not including the animated versions, how they got them. So maybe they already have them. But the big rumor here is it's also rumored to be set in the 1960s. Now, the asterisk I'll add to this, someone has also said maybe it's a possible, they're in a different multiverse of the 60s, right? They're not in the MCU proper, and they get transported here through like hopping dimensions or whatever scientific-y things they're doing. Now, I'm not saying that's false or not, but that would help explain why we've not heard about them in the MCU.
Now, what would be really cool is if, you know, if they're from like another dimension, right? It'd be cool if they were from a kind of retro future dimension, right? Mm-hmm. There's a show on Apple TV that we never got around to finishing, but we watched a couple episodes. I think it was called Hello Tomorrow or something like that. But it was like a world of what if like the retro future that everyone predicted did come true. So like all of the cars are hover cars, but they all look like 1950s like hot rods and stuff like that.
So it's like Tomorrowland at Disney, right? If that just was the design kind of going forward.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be kind of fun, is like maybe like that's where they start off in their movie in this like fun, unique world, and then they get like pulled into ours or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're known to, again, hopping through whatever the difference between a dimension and a universe is. We don't know yet. But there's also like, you know, the negative zone there, you know, that was something that could feature and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here to have fun with this, and if they do make them, you know, cross over the Fantastic Four, then they show up either in Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars and they all merge them in later. That's still a fun way to say, hey, we don't have to alternate our old history, right? You don't have to re-release that new book just yet about the history of the MCU because they came from a different universe where they like you said, things look different. They can have a visually aesthetic that's different than ours. Thor 5. Words I'm still not sure are true. Thor 5 is in development at Marvel Studios without Taika Waititi. Obviously, people are down on Love and Thunder. It's fine, totally get it. To me, I think Gore the God Butcher didn't do enough God butchering. Thor 5 is not definitely a movie I thought would be announced, especially after Bob Iger saying that they want to focus less on sequels and more on quality of films. So, anything you can think of on Thor 5, Mike? While we're
it feels like it's time for Taika Waititi to kind of move on in general. I mean, he's a very visionary director and creative, right? Yeah. If you look at his, catalog, he's done he's done stuff all over the board. So I think it's kind of almost better for everyone if he kind of moves along, and it seems like he got his paycheck, he's got his money, he got his multiple vacation home paycheck out of the 2 Marvel projects, right? Yeah. And and that's fine. Move along to the next thing. Our Flag Means Death is insanely popular on HBO. He's got Reservation Dogs that he executive produces. I'm sure he's working on other things.
He's got that. Well, he's got I think it's a soccer movie coming out soon.
Oh yeah, that's right. And I think he's actually in it as well. I think he's starring in it. So he's like a very talented person. So I'm happy he's not chained to the MCU anymore. I think he's probably happy that he's not there anymore. He's just this very chaotic like visionary. So I just want him out in Hollywood, just cross-pollinating over a bunch of different things. I think that's the best route for.
Yeah. Well, I think again he was working Thor: Love and Thunder under a Bob Chapek regime, right? Hey, get your movie out by a deadline. It was one of the shorter movies. It had to come out. It had to get out there and do something. And I think Thor as a character, the different iterations, the different versions he benefits from someone else comes in and says, this is what I want to do with Thor, right? And kind of not reinvents him, but like kind of refocuses him on the whole. So I like Chris Hemsworth. I think, we give him Thor 5 and then we sunset him, right? This is Thor 5 could be his last outing, and I would be totally fine with Thor. The character I thought would have no more than 2 movies. Getting 5 is blowing my mind right now. So, but he also wasn't in Civil War either. He kind of got a little bit of the shaft in Age of Ultron. So yeah, they're probably making it. But I think one more Thor movie, Mike, and I'm good. Right? We don't need any more Chris Hemsworth after that. Well, we could have more Chris Hemsworth. I'm not saying I'm against him, but let him go out on good terms. Give him one really good outing on the way out. So I don't know who I'd want to put in charge of this. I thinking of names, I was trying to think of something. I'm like, who do you give Thor to? And then I was like, I couldn't tell you any directors right now that would probably sign up for Marvel, let alone do a Thor movie. So maybe we can get a Wes Anderson Thor movie. Really.
That would be wild.
It would be really, really have fun with it. The Marvels movie, Mike. We actually talked about this a little bit earlier. The movie is coming out November 10th, and the embargo for this review is a little lifting. A little. The social reactions are one day. The actual reviews are a little closer. The week of review, and this is to protect story spoilers. And you were like, I bet you're like, probably not. But I know what the story spoiler is. And it's wild, Mike. It's going to blow your mind. And I cannot wait to talk to you about it if this does come true. Now, again, I mark everything with a rumor. I'm not telling anybody anything. But I can't fathom this even happening, Mike. And that's why I want to see if it comes true or not for this.
Well, so I remember you were telling me about this in our DMs, if you will.
Yeah.
And you were telling me catastrophic event. A big story point, huge spoiler. So I ran to my phone and made sure I had my tickets secured for Captain Marvel because I hadn't gotten them yet. So I got those for Thursday night. So hopefully any spoiler I can avoid on that end. But also it reminded me of, I saw like a headline, and I don't know how out of context this quote was, or maybe even how old the quote was from Brie Larson. And I never even fact checked it, so it goes to show you that I'm not a journalist. But the sum of it was Brie Larson is kind of sick and tired of playing Captain Marvel
that's from the MCU book I was talking about earlier, The Reign of Marvel Studios. Whenever they were talking about when Bob Chapek took over. Mm-hmm. So that quote is from Bob Chapek's era, where they were like, they didn't have any direction after her movie, right? What have we seen her really do in there? So absolutely, yeah.
So maybe the ship has been righted there, but my super dark horse prediction, since you kind of put this in my ear, is she dies in her own movie and she's done. So that's gonna be my random out there guess, and we'll check back in a couple.
We'll check. And just, I mean, I'm not confirming or denying you, because I would never tell you what it is. But the thing, it's called the Marvels. It's not Captain Marvel 2. So technically, you could literally have the other two and still be the Marvels. Just throwing it out
We've
there.
still technically made a plural in this by the end of the movie.
Yeah. Well, there'll be three. There's three, and there'll be two left. So yeah, absolutely. But the end credits supposedly tie into Phase 6, and this is one of the other things I did read in this. If it is true, it comes from. I just can't even, Mike, right now. I don't even want to talk about it, because I'm like, no one's gonna believe me if I said it right now. So that's why I want to talk about it later.
I mean, I do have to say, I feel like it's been a minute since I've watched something in the Marvel universe where I feel like there has been like some sort of catastrophic a change, or like big red flag, if you will, right? Like, I thought Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was just going to be like, whoa, this is insane and crazy. But like by the end of the movie, things were kind of like wrapped up, and like, oh, there might be an incursion, but that was about it.
I was saying, I didn't know if I said anything catastrophic either, so don't hold me to that. But yes, there's something in here that I've never would thought would happen ever in the MCU. So just gonna say right there. And you know, I don't know if you're caught up on Loki, Mike, and we're not here to talk about Loki, but the more I'm watching the newest season of Loki, the more I'm seeing how many of those seeds or likenesses were set up in Ant-Man and Quantumania, even though the movie didn't really deliver on all fronts. I can see those seeds being set in that movie for something in Phase 6, if you will. Including, I don't know, I think we mentioned on the show, what Kang was making in Quantumania was a loom, like a small loom, to control the timeline, and how they're making that in the Loki show. But I'm very excited for that show. This should wrap up in 2 episodes. So I don't know if you're caught up. I don't want to assume anything or say any spoilers in here, but you got 2 episodes of that. So I think the seeds are finally. Phase 5 didn't have any. Phase 6 is starting to plant, or like give us more of this multiversal thing kind of going forward. So we'll knock on wood. Young Avengers. I didn't think they'd ever make a movie, and I don't know if this is still true or not, but the rumor is the plan they're going to shoot a Young Avengers film next year, even though it has not. It is one of those blanks in Phase 6 that was never announced. Remember when everything was changed? So, do you think we're gonna get a Young Avengers film?
I mean, right now I'm Googling Young Avengers MCU because I'm just looking for one of those collages, trying to see. I can't keep track of all these young kids all the time, right?
Right. Well, again, some of them may not be met, but obviously we have Kate Bishop from Hawkeye. We have Miss Marvel. My guess is they're probably going to use the Maximoff kids from WandaVision.
Yeah, they could bring them in. They could do. It looks like I'm seeing Cassie Lang, right? Was that his daughter's name?
Yep. Stature, if you will, from that. Young Avengers, I think it's, fantastic idea. It's a great audience. They've not really done a younger person's movie, right? Like an age down version of this movie yet. So be interesting to see it. I just hope it has a good plot point, like a purpose. What is the purpose of Young Avengers?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're somebody out there that just thinks like, oh, can this like kind of younger cast, bring an interesting story? I mean, the animated Young Justice series was great. I love the stories that they were telling over there. So.
Teen Titans had a great show. I mean, I think it can, but just doing it because we have the Young Avengers, like enough characters to make a Young Avengers team is weird to me. Or not weird. Just I trust that Bob Iger says he's working on quality. Please let this be a quality film and not something that they have to do, right?
Yes, that's true. Because we still have to get through a couple different movies and series, that have kind of already been started before the pledge of quality was kind of hoisted into the air, right?
Yeah.
So this one should theoretically fall under that umbrella, right?
Yeah, and I do, again, hope so. And Young Avengers, again, nothing. The comic books for Marvel, for DC, as you mentioned, the animations. There are plenty of good things. You can make really good stuff with the younger crews. But I think also using the name Avengers is to me, is a sticking point, right? We've not had an Avengers. Avengers are supposed to be, tentpole films, event films. Now is what they're saying. I get that they're called Young Avengers, but like, don't use Young Avengers. Is there another name we can call them that fits better in this situation, right? Kind of thing, like Titans and Teen Titans, or
Teenage Avengers.
No, stop using Avengers. Stop using Avengers. Yeah, little guy. That's they already used that for Ant-Man. He was a little guy. That's his book. Yeah. Anyway, so this movie's possibly planning to shoot next year, and it's one of those unannounced Phase 6 films. I think again, movies are gonna. Again, we're going to see a maybe not a decline, but a less series on Disney Plus and more movies. Or not more movies, but just keep the same movies here. Anyway, Daredevil, Born Again. We had a big there's a big expose on this a couple weeks ago, right? We talked about it quite a bit on the show. Dario Scardapane, I can't pronounce his name, don't know it, who was a showrunner for, or at least maybe writer for the Punisher Netflix series, and Jack Ryan is now the TV showrunner for Daredevil, Born Again, Mike.
I mean, Punisher, great sign. We watched like 1.5 seasons, I would say, of Jack Ryan, and we were having a good time, right?
Yep.
I feel like we want strong stories here, and they were at least strong in Punisher, that's for sure. So great.
And again, the promise is they want someone in TV, right? Someone who has the ability to work in TV. They're not hiring film executives. This guy has worked on TV series before. Again, for Netflix and Amazon, high budget things. He has experience and can bring this to the table. So that they've at least kept to that phrase, what they said they were going to do, commitment to do that. They've also hired Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who are directors of Loki, including I think all of season 2 and some of season 1, for the remaining episodes as well. So the remaining stuff that they're going to use some of the original stuff, but what they're going to rearrange and serialize some of it, they're going to be filming that for us or directing it.
Yeah, I feel like we got some good pedigree here, right?
Yeah, and so as we always say on the show, usually when there's a team of somebody, we usually get the best content. Again, you didn't confirm or deny your cut up with Loki, but that show, from a directing point of view, is visually beautiful. They're getting great performances out of their actors. I cannot complain one bit.
Yeah, still one episode behind, but nearly caught up, and it is fantastic.
Yes, I'm very excited for you to watch the new one, Mike. And I only say this because I saw looking up these guys, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. The latest episode of Loki in season 2, episode 4, is the highest rated episode of the show on IMDb so far for both seasons. So. Very excited for that. That just goes to show they are doing great work. The directors are. Also, this was separate from this note. Those two things are facts. This is a rumor. Jessica Jones is rumored to return in the show again with Kristen Ritter. It was kind of up in the air whether they would bring some of these people back. I've recently talking to someone at work. I could really, I'd take everyone back but Finn Jones. I don't want that Iron Fist back ever again. So
yeah, unfortunately, I don't even think a multiversal shift could help that out.
Yeah, and everyone's like, "Oh, he was fine." I'm like, I'm sure he's a great person, great actor, but he didn't know martial arts and know how to fight. Like, we have Shang-Chi as the MCU standard for kung fu now, right? Like fighting. That guy could barely, punch his way out of an office room. If he had a hallway fight scene, the hallway would win. Is what I'm just saying out there. But Jessica Jones, she's last seen in the MCU in season 3 of her own Netflix show, right? Jessica Jones season 3, and she's currently in an Orphan Black spinoff show. They have filmed it. I don't know if it's released yet or not, but I don't think it's out yet. But she has her own Orphan Black where she plays all the characters, all the clones. So, pretty. That's good news, right? No one disliked her. She got 3 seasons, so. Blade, according to what we saw at the top of the show, the rumor of the new upcoming Blade movie is that will be set in the 1920s, Mike. Which did not see that coming, if I'm going to be honest.
I mean, I mean, that'd be really cool, right? Because Blade is a character who can just persist through time, so we don't really have to worry necessarily about time travel of the character, right? So this kind of brings me back to the thing I always bring up with Blade is what's the explanation when it comes to like monsters existing. I mean, we kind of touched on that a little bit in Werewolf by Night of like this legacy of kind of monster hunters. So they seem to just exist and be out there in the world. Maybe the reason why modern times doesn't talk about them that much is because like Blade and, you know, similar ilk do a really good job, I guess, at hunting the demons and keeping them at bay.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, that'd be interesting. I really want between this and Fantastic Four, what we're getting are period pieces, right? And this is what it sounds like. And I love that idea. Something visually different than modern day New York is gonna be great for me because I just can't stand looking at modern day cities in these things. So having 1920s, there's no technology. He's gonna have to be designing his own weapons, right? Like using the blades or using things that, you know, are just not visibly, they are not feasible back then. It's gonna be interesting. The main villain is rumored to be Lilith. I think we've talked about this before. The actress who's in X and Pearl, I forget her name. She signed up for the movie, and she's rumored to be Lilith, who is the mother of demons, and most recently played the main villain in the Midnight Suns game that came out. I want to say last fall, about a year ago.
I mean, that squarely kind of puts this in supernatural realm for sure. I mean, traditionally we see Blade teamed up strictly in a vampire world, so this kind of broadens it a little bit more.
Yep.
I'm okay with that.
The other rumor, and I don't have it here, this was a while back, was that it was going to be set in Europe as well, right? So maybe, you know, I think when we talked about why vampires, demons, and stuff are not in Americas, because they've always kind of kept them in that European nations kind of thing.
They were too scared of boats. I mean, they're just like, yeah, I'm a bat, I can fly, but like, I'm not sure about boats yet. They had to wait till they invented some better boating technology before
they're afraid
crossed.
of scurvy, Mike.
That's what it is.
You know, vampires can't come back from scurvy. But I've not also watched The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which is like that Nosferatu movie where he's on the boat. But I'm excited for Blade. We've been talking about it for 4 years now, a little over 4 years since the official announcement. We've gone through writers and directors, and right now writers are back on, so you know, good for them. Hopefully, they can be working on this. Well, the actors are not. They don't have a resolution to their strike yet, but I think this will be fun. I'm excited for Blade, Mike, and if it's set in the 1920s, I look forward to seeing that come to fruition. But speaking of kind of, I guess this kind of falls in the same thing as like Blade, specters, you know, demons, gods, whatever, is Moon Knight, right? We saw Moon Knight last year, and it's finally rumored to get a season 2. And then, as always, as we were promised going forward on these TV shows, Moon Knight will also show up in the upcoming Avengers movies. Mike.
Well, I'm just hoping Moon Knight gets the same treatment that all of these other new projects are getting, because I want a better second season. I started off so strong, but so I'm still, the taste of my mouth for Moon Knight is sour. Oscar Isaac, I love Oscar Isaac. No complaints on that front, so that's okay. But I just want a little bit more coherent.
I'm looking forward to Moon Knight. I like how, again, more isolated it is, right? Like, again, it doesn't, if you watch it by itself, it doesn't have to connect to anything, and they never say it connects to anything, which is fun. But the character himself, he's got a lot of potential, a lot of promise, right? And then also with the multiple characters and with the Jake Lockley character, I believe we were introduced to at the end there, right? His gangster persona. Would love to get more into this and the psyche of Moon Knight and how he not necessarily possesses but connects with the character. But absolutely, I think visually also Moon Knight, great character to look at, right? That costume they had for that show, nailed it. So I want to see more of that come up here. But yes, season 2, again, if they're promising TV showrunners and serialization, hopefully they are able to, again, pull that bar up a little bit with them. Last Marvel bit of news here is Iron Man will apparently appear in the MCU before the MCU reboot that we've just discussed about after Secret Wars. So
it's weird, right?
Yes.
It's weird from a sense of like what an amazing send off the character had in
Infinity War. In-game.
In-game, that's the word I'm looking for. Man, all of that rumor and build up to the name of that second part 2, and I can't even remember it anymore.
Yeah.
But what an amazing send-off. Absolutely perfect, right? So, but also at the same time, if you're also going to do this kind of like secondary send-off to the kind of the original class, I guess, kind of Saved by the Bell style of the MCU, does kind of seem like seeing Robert Downey Jr. again would kind of be like a nice kind of like bow at the end. But they got to do it so perfectly that if they just mess it up, I'm just going to be mad.
Let me go ahead and tell you, the fact you're assuming it's Robert Downey Jr. probably means you're wrong. My guess is it's going to be the what we did not get in Doctor Strange, that was very highly rumored, was a Tom Cruise version, right, of the Superior Iron Man. Would you be upset if it's a variant universe Tony Stark who was not Robert Downey Jr.?
Well, I think if they construct a scene, right, where a bunch of heroes pop up on the screen, the audience is freaking out because like, wait a minute, there's a cat. Like maybe they start from like a chest down type of shot, right?
Yeah.
Think Superman at the end of the first Shazam movie, right? So we're seeing like an Iron Man suit, a Captain America suit, Black Widow, right? All of these other characters, and then it pans up and they're like all different actors. That would be I think that would be kind of like fun and interesting, and then. There's some sort of explanation. Maybe the Watcher is down there like, a TVA agent is explaining all of these multiple like universes stuff. That could be kind of fun. So if you're going to use just the Iron Man suit, that's a little different.
Well, I mean, it could be someone. I think if they talk about like all these rumored characters who've always played Iron Man, especially it's always Tom Cruise, and he might do it, for a send off. But I think it's not a TV agent. What if it's Deadpool pointing out all these things instead? Because we know he's going to be a big part of Secret Wars that we've talked about. What if it's Deadpool saying like, oh my God, it's Iron Man, but not the one kind of thing. Like he's the guy who's going to be the one pointing this stuff out. Now, I agree if it is the reboot, and there's is it a hologram or is it another Robert Downey Jr. variant from another universe of Iron Man? If they do it right and he's like doing the send off because he was the first one and he'll be the last one of this nice tight universe. I think that would be fun or interesting, right? Poignant, if you will. On he's the first and the last we see, but it's not going to be the same one, right? You're right. He did a very good job. But by the time they reboot it, guess what? That'll be like almost 10 years after we saw him die again. In 2028, whenever, or 2027, possibly later if things keep getting delayed as they are. But I think enough time would have passed to bring him back again wouldn't feel like a cash-in. It would be like, oh, you guys remember, you've been with us for 20 years. You remember Iron Man, right? Kind of deal. So I think there's opportunity to do both in this. If done, like you mentioned, if done right, we don't want it to be just like a quick cash-in kind of deal. So, and in Secret Wars, if it splits into 2 movies, even better. Even more time with these characters, right? We get some quality time with them. But anyway, I thought Iron Man, a rumor that Iron Man will show up, or at least a variant of Iron Man will show up beforehand, would be wild. As we talked about at the top of the show, Lanterns, Chris Mundy, who's the showrunner of Ozark, has been tapped to be the showrunner of Lanterns, the upcoming Green Lantern show set in the Gunn Safran verse. And then, again, just a reminder, this show will focus on Hal Jordan, who is older by, I think, about maybe 10, 20 years than Jon Stewart, they're normally portrayed as the same age, but they're going to set up an age dynamic for the show and the characters. And as another reminder, Nathan Fillion will appear as Guy Gardner in Superman Legacy, the orange-haired bowl-cut Green Lantern with an anger problem. So, again, big fan of Green Lanterns. I hope this goes out. Mike, any ideas? I never watched Ozark. Did you? I don't.
I mean, I never watched it, but I know it was one of those really successful Netflix shows. So successful that it made it past the 3-season kind of death kill mark. So, I mean, that's gotta be a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. Great showrunner, and I've only heard good things. And that's our DC news. Now we're going to jump into a little bit of mix here. Highlander, the reboot. Have you ever watched the Highlander movies, Mike?
No, I'm familiar with the concept.
There can be only one, right? The first movie told a good story. The second one retconned fucking everything, and went only downhill from there. TV show I heard was good, but the movie's moving forward with John Selesky, who is director of John Wick, directing, and Henry Cavill starring as Connor McLeod.
Wow.
It'll be a modern retelling reboot of the original movie, which is, had Sean Connery in the original one. The idea of there's Highlanders, you have abilities, you have to behead the other ones, and you get their power. And then when it's only one, you get to make, the ultimate wish, I guess. So I'm excited. I think I've recently downloaded a bunch of the Highlander movies because I watched them all years ago. Boy, do they get schlocky later on. So if you're looking for some schlocky action films, go check those out if you want. And then lastly, a surprising bit of news here. Did you ever watch the Samaritan movie last year with Sylvester Stallone on Amazon Prime?
The most I watched from it is one of those visual effects artist react videos. They did a couple scenes from this movie, and they were kind of roasting them, I guess, pun intended, over some of the fire effects in one of the shots. So I can't extrapolate much out of that when it comes to quality, but I remember we talked about this, and I was like, why would anyone watch this?
Yeah, so he's essentially Sylvester Stallone plays a quote unquote retired superhero. Everyone thought he died like 20 years ago, fighting his like nemesis, and he's just kind of, I think he's picking up he's a trash man for like the city or something. Then he has to help like a kid finds out who he is, and he has to end up saving the kid down the road. Sits at a 38% of Rotten Tomatoes. Now, mind you, we don't use Rotten Tomatoes as a basis for everything, but from a critical standpoint, 38%, not very good, Mike. Currently higher than Five Nights at Freddy's, if you want to really be topical with today's movie. But apparently it found an audience with viewers because Amazon has greenlit a sequel to this.
Wow. That is definitely an analytics-driven choice, right? They know exactly through their AWS metrics, right?
Yeah.
Who watched it and for how long, and is this a demographic that we are desperately trying to keep around? Or maybe they're just like, hey, the budget just works out. We can crank this out, and all we got to do is sell a few more back-to-school binders or something.
Well, the other thing is produced, not executive produced, straight produced by Sylvester Stallone, and part of his production company means that maybe they're using are people watching Stallone movies, right? With Expendables 4 coming out and all the Rocky, like, are people watching his movies and he's still a name? And if he's like, yeah, I want to do this movie, and they're like, all right, well, we have the data that says you're still a popular action star, let's go with it, kind of thing. I never watched it. I know someone who actually wrote a comic book very, very similar to this years and years ago. So I think I even mentioned that on the show. So, kudos for him, and hopefully he's selling more books. But I'm very, very baffled why this one's getting a sequel of all the movies in the world, of all the properties. So, but I gotta show you, streaming, that's the way it works in streams. Well, Mike, that is the show for this week. If people want to know what you're doing, what you're up to, where can they find all them goodies at?
Yeah, if they want to find my web comics, all you got to do is visit liferewardsrisk.com or pickledcomics.com. Check out all of my funny little musings over there. Chris, if people want to find you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Valdan87, VALDAN, or on Video Game Systems with the same name, doing that. If people want to know more about our show, what we're doing, our next review episode, I believe, is The Marvels, actually. Get ready for that, or listen to our regularly scheduled weekly episodes. Where can they find all them goodies at?
Oh, all you got to do is visit superheroslate.com. That is the alternate universe where you can find every link to every show we've ever done, our awesome upcoming release calendar. Head on over to superheroslate.com. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you love to find podcasts. And you get merch at superheroslate.com/store. We love hearing from you. Please reach out. Let us know if you are one of the select few that watched The Samaritan on Amazon Prime, and if you're clamoring for a sequel, I would love to know. And we love our super fans. So if you want to be a super fan of the show, all you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week, folks.
That's right. We